This hangout was done in 2017. And what I'm going to do now is play just a minute of it, and then put in my thoughts about this ocean, which is where the Himalayas are. And then we're going to play a part of that hangout to explain electrical arcings, to tell you, or to explain to you, this is what happened with the Himalayas.
And this is pushed up from the surface from there. Again, see, like in those experiments in the beginning, you have a rim around it. Here you have a rim that is pushed up a bit. Then the rest is lowered a bit. You can see that. And then this is pushed up again. So you have an outer rim that is pushed up. Inside it's pushed down a bit. And in the middle it's pushed up again. See with those electrical discharges. This is from the side. Now you can clearly see it. Yeah, to me it looks like it was pushed up, very clear. And again, like Karen mentioned, a lot of trees in this area. It's attracted to that area.
Artists, when those arcings happened,
yeah,
that's what Chris Monk reckoned, as well as you, that this would have all taken just minutes to do.
Yep.
This whole thing would happen just.
Yeah. Because indeed, yeah, it takes minutes, because sometimes you see it's frozen in time. You can see it happening also with those balls lying around, because a lot of the times in these strike zones and in these electrical discharges, you see spherical balls lying around. Metal and metal rich, or they are rich with the gemstones.
Chris has added in the chat, when the rock is created instantly by the electricity as it fuses sand together into rock formations.
Yeah.
Obviously, I was trying to look for earthquakes and things, or things that might happen in that time of 1739, 1740. Is that the year 17? Yes, that one, isn't it? But that one actually was in 1840, so it wasn't quite the timing. So I was looking around. Let's put my little video on. I've sped it up a bit, so I'll have to probably stop it. So I was looking around, and then there was one in England, which I think I'm going to show you. That one was Turkey, but it was another great event around that time. I still don't think they were big enough to cause the devastation that the Himalayas did by being so they're saying there was water there, and then the electrical arcing happens and it pushes the mountains up, and the mountains are huge in a huge area, and all that sea then disbanded. But they're saying it's thousands and thousands of years ago, or millions of years ago, and whatever it was. But they still have that place, earthquakes and things in the same place as the 1841. They're still getting the same, if you want. And then it talked about soil liquefaction. Doesn't explain that much, only that shaking and all sorts of things and buildings moving is called liquefaction. So that was very interesting. At least it's mentioned. A lot of people think that that's happened. It was that. Go on, because that's talking about that earthquake, which we want to move on. And that's a bit about that one because of the devastation it caused. See, there it is there, look. Another one. We need it another 100 years before, probably. Well, I don't know when the one with the actually happened, but look at that. They're saying that that was the sea. That it was 4,970 miles east to west, 5,000 kilometres, 310 miles, 8,000 kilometres north to south. So that sea was there before the Himalayas. An old sea can go and not cause masses of trouble when these hills are put up. And then, yeah, it's just ridiculous to think that there would have been utter devastation everywhere when that sea disappeared. It didn't just disappear, did it? It was an electric arcing that made I mean, look what they're showing it look like. Right, look at the size of Turkey. It's right out there in the sea, and now it's not. It's ridiculous. But anyway, it talks about the sea. I suppose they acknowledge it. A strange picture. And oh, that's what they're saying happened. Doink, doink, doink. But now what we're going to do is... Oh, this is about Everest. So, what it is it's up here. They're about that height, but Everest is 29. That one's 23, so the peak of Everest sticks up a bit higher. It's still in a mountain range with all these mountains, which are roughly 23,600 feet. It just so happens that Everest is 29. So that's interesting, isn't it? And that's on the edge of the Himalayas, on top of the Himalayas. And there's that picture of that again. And now what we're going to do is we're going to listen to the Hangout explaining the electrical arcings. But it was a huge electrical arcing. I mean, look at this picture. Obviously, this was 2017. This is artist's work. It was his pictures, his research. But look at that mountain range pushed out of the ground. That's still quite a big thing. It's not as big as the Himalayas, but let's just look at the Himalayas. So the Himalayas, and then on top is Everest. There is the same thing. There is that ridge that's been pushed out of the ground. And yet this was a sea here. So you can imagine, because it's quite big, that push. Absolutely enormous. That's Russia up here, China. Miles big. Sea here, look, that's probably part of what was left of where the sea was. Look at it, absolutely enormous. That water, devastated everywhere. And I already did that video. Went down there, went down there. Yeah, it didn't happen the way that they said. But anyway, let's watch the little video I've made. Well, I was in the Hangout, but I've remade the video to show you.
Maybe he has a bottle under his decks. Who knows? I don't know. Yeah. Okay, here's the next bit in the presentation. First, a little recap of last time. These are those spheres that Dr. C.J. Ransom did in certain kinds of sand. That you can see how the sand reacts to a discharge of electrical experiments, positive and negative discharges and everything. You can see that outer rim, sometimes the middle is pushed up and the rim, and you can see all kinds of shapes happening, but most of the time you can see the rim very clear. Those electrical discharges here, some couple in a row, so it's not always one, it's sometimes there are a couple like here. And if you look at another one who did those same kind of research with sands and metal, powdered metal, and powder metals fused with the sands, and then a discharge in it, and you can see positive and negative discharges, and you can see that happening, the same pattern. It goes out almost like a snow crystal a bit. Here's another one. You can see all those lines going out and towards each other. You can see clearly the discharges. Here's another one just to show you all the experiments William George Armstrong did with the discharges. You can see the pattern and some all things going out in different kinds of shapes. So you can see all the shapes that are happening when you have discharges. This already looks a little bit like a plant almost, or on the surface. Here you have found another one I didn't show last time. You can see those discharges just in like with that other guy. Only there's some more points and a nice round discharge. This one is also interesting from George Armstrong. You can see this nice discharge to somebody in the chest last time. And it looks a bit like a human eye. So I thought, well, let's see how...
Artists, these pictures are quite old, aren't they, the ones that you're showing us?
Yeah, this is from the 1800s. So that's very old. And after that, there weren't a lot of people who did that experiments again. So basically, there are two guys, as far as I know, who did those experiments. And I'm glad You can find them in old archives. It's sometimes a little bit hard to find, but you can find them if you have if you type in electrical discharges. For sure, you will find these. And this again, like somebody said in the chat, looks a little bit like a human eye. And I thought, well, let's see how a human eye looks. Well, you can see looks the same. Also, that black hole in the middle. You can see all those lines going out, electric lines. So that was very interesting. That looks a lot like an electrical discharge. And I found out what Dre was mentioning was the Lichtenberg figures, and I thought, well, let's check into that. Basically, it's a microwave transformer. So if an old microwave and you hook those up, those electrical clips, you discharge them in a piece of wood. First, you have to make the wood a little bit wet, so the discharge is going a little bit more smooth. And then this is the first stage. I took some screenshots of a video. And this is how the discharge goes further. You can see a tree-type shape. It almost looks like a tree or a bush a bit. Very organic. And then it goes further. And at the end it meets towards it. So the discharges are looking for the other charge to click onto each other. You can see a tree type of shape. That was very interesting. And I thought, well, those three type of shapes you also see on the Earth. This is another Lichtenberg figure, so you can see that the shapes sometimes differ a bit. If you compare that to Google Maps, you go on Google Maps, you compare it to that. You can see here also discharge, very clear. Very darker than the rest of the surroundings. This one is far darker. You can see the discharge going over here, like a tree type of shape of a tree. And here's another one going down, and they look exactly like those this Lichtenberg figures. So I thought that was interesting. That those discharges look exactly like those Lichtenberg figures often. And you can see this is basically that mountain, this dark mountain in the right corner. If you look close to it, you can see that it's all crumbled down by a strong force. This was probably once a solid mountain. And that was basically pushed out of the earth, because I think everything was pushed out of the earth. And sometimes the surface is also lowered. So you have two ways. Sometimes it's pushed up and the surface is lowered, or only it was pushed up, or only the surface is lowered. But I've showed that in the other pictures. You can see this is pushed out and it's crumbled down. It's not that solid anymore. It became rubble. And here's some other figures. Here, this is in Siret in Egypt, near Tethys, Sudan, in Egypt.
Hey, artist, the one thing you've noticed by all these Archings, the trees are growing, yeah?
Yeah, that's another thing that I will show in a bit. Indeed, near those Archings, often, no worries, Karen. Often near those discharges, the trees grow better. You can also see these are basically also plant life in those Archings. And I have one that I can zoom in here. You can see also these discharges very clear. And here in the mountains, and indeed, like Karen mentioned, those trees are very nearby here. In those Archings, the discharges in the mountains even, it's most time the most fertilized ground in the area. And what's also interesting, sometimes you have those strikes, a positive and negative strike, and you don't see nothing on the surface. Well, often it's underground. Like this jewel cave, it's a national monument, and it's also near those discharges near the petrified forest, because you don't, in the petrified forest, you sometimes don't see those tree-type shapes, those electrical discharges, but they are underground. So that's interesting that sometimes it's not on the surface, it's underground. And this one is just found one in Africa, in Botswana. Well, this looks a lot like a tree. So there are trees on the flat surface, only they're not vertically, they are horizontal. Because this is very clear. Three times.
That's crazy, isn't it, artist?
Yeah. It's very, very. You can find this very easily if you zoom in on a part of Africa that is South Africa. You can find this shape very easily in Botswana, Africa. It's even on a high altitude you can see this very clear. And this is also a discharge that I found in Australia. I thought let's see also other countries, and you can see this is the discharge. You zoom in, very clear, that rounded shape, just like those tests they did with powdered sands and powdered metals. That you get the discharge. This is exactly the same shape. And you can see what happens around it. If you take a look, you can clearly see that those discharges here, all the mountains are pushed aside. Very clear, like a ripple effect almost. So it's a very strong force that went straight through this surface and pushed up mountains and pushed down surfaces. And here over here you can even see those tree type figures, because there isn't even water in this area. But still you can see all those lightning strikes. They just like lightning in the sky. That is also electric. Also looks like that, and it also looks like trees. So it's all electric, magnetic discharges. And then you get all these kinds of shapes, those craters and those pushed up surfaces. And this is a close-up of that. This near Mount Connor. This is the Boos Bluff crater. So, interesting name. And this is basically near that, close by. And this is the Mount Connor. And this is pushed up. So this is pushed down into the surface, the Earth. And this is pushed up from the surface from the Earth. And again, see, like in those experiments in the beginning, you have a rim around it. Here you have a rim that is pushed up a bit. Then the rest is lowered a bit. You can see that. And then this is pushed up again. So you have an outer rim that is pushed up. Inside it's pushed down a bit. And in the middle it's pushed up again. So often this kind of shape you can see with those electrical discharges. This is from the side. No, you can clearly see it. Yeah, to me it looks like it was pushed up, very clear. And again, like Karen mentioned, a lot of trees in this area and surrounding. There are also trees, but in this area the trees are the biggest and the highest, almost 99% of the time. So that's interesting. This basically distance is 184 kilometers from Mount Connor to the Boos Bluff crater. You can see the electrical discharge happening. Here is very dark, and here there are waters again with salty waters. That's also often the case that you have salty lakes near them, because the salt is attracted to that area, and also iron and minerals are attracted to the area. Often those mountains are rich of iron or minerals. And just like I showed, near that area, very close by, is this Nicholson's gold mine. So you can see even gold is attracted to that area.
Artists, when those Archings happened,
yeah,
it's what Chris Monk reckoned as well as you, that this would have all taken just minutes to do.
Yep.
This whole thing would happen just.
Yep. Because indeed, yeah, it takes minutes, because sometimes you see it's frozen in time. You can see it happening also with those balls lying around, because a lot of the times near these strike zones and in these electrical discharges, you see spherical balls lying around. And this is another crater. Again, you can see the outer rim is pushed up again. And near that is the other surface is pushed up. And this is pushed down, basically pushed down. You get a ring around it. And again, trees. Very all the trees.
Artists, just to let you know, Chris Monk's in the chat room.
Okay, cool. Hey, Chris.
Hello, Chris.
Thanks for being here.
Hello, Chris.
Hello, Chris.
Yeah, if you want to come on, please do.
Yes, Chris, if you wanted to come on.
You can come on. If you don't, it's all right with me. Okay.
We love you, Chris.
Oh yeah, sure we do. We love everybody who does great research.
Oh, he's a friend as well, isn't he?
Oh yeah, for sure. He's very nice to me all the time. And he was also very nicely posting in the last comment that he thought I did a great job in explaining it. So that is always nice to hear that from somebody like him. And
Come with the guitar.
What are you saying that you did?
Bring the guitar.
yeah,
Oh, yeah, we missed the guitar.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, an artist misses playing his little mouth organ.
Yeah, sometimes Chris has also interesting things to say, and we do research and we fill the research time in with the guitar and loud harp. Yeah, it's always fun. But let's go on a little bit. This is another crater. This is, again, you can see one is a crater, one is pushed up again from the ground. Very, very clear. And it's iron rich or metal rich. And near that site, dus near this site, where those mountains are, these are the Ngumbam cliffs near the Wolf Creek crater. So this is the Wolf Creek crater. And these are the Ngumbam cliffs, and this is all in Australia. And near that, again, you have those stone spherical balls, like I mentioned before, around. Sometimes they are still attached to each other. Sometimes they are loose. And you have another picture. You can see all, not one, well, tens, a lot of them lying around. Those spherical balls, and it's often the case with those electrical discharges. You have these spherical balls that are formed, and sometimes they appear to be shot out of the ground and then landed back on the ground again. And here is the same thing happening. Again, those flattened mountains, they were pushed out of the ground. Some people say those are those trees, but I don't think so, because you don't have the rest lying around. It's much more much more likely that it is pushed out of the ground. But again, you see this on an other from a plane. This field of pushed out of the ground mountains. But near that you have those trees lying. Well, what I think that there was once a forest, maybe high trees, maybe trees of 20 meters high, 40 meters high, like that height, not higher, I think, in my opinion. But those trees were petrified, and maybe also turned into minerals almost by the strike. So the strike was happening so fast that they turned the trees into minerals, and they petrified the trees. It was caused by the strike. That's my opinion. What happened, and it's more logic, because here you have those flattened mountains in the distance. This is that area I showed in Arizona, and you can clearly see all those trees that are in that strike zone region all turned into stone. So I think that what happened, that there were, well, big trees around, but not that big that some people think they were, just maybe 20 or 40 meters, and that's, I don't want to go farther than that high. And they were struck by this electrical strike and discharge, and the trees went to became petrified. Here you can see this surface also almost like sand, petrified. It became solid. The ground became solid as a rock because of those strikes. You can see the shapes, very strange shapes you get, and it's also pushed out of the ground. You see in this rim, it is also pushed out of the ground, like the surface was almost like it was cooking, like you're cooking a pancake. Sometimes it bubbles also, and you get the surface like this. So the surface was boiling and was pushed out of the ground a bit. You get this kind of surface, and you can see those flattened mountains in the back that basically was part of the huge strike that went down in this area. Again, you can see here, this is the Barrington crater, very big crater, and this is a hill that It's also interesting, this hill fits almost exactly into this crater. It's almost like an electric socket. It fits into each other, and the mountains in between are pushed up from the ground. Very, very clear. And here you have the Barrington crater. Just the measurements, you can see how big it is. And it is 1.2 kilometers wide. But it's very wide. You can see people inside, and you can see how big it is. A very, very big crater. But if you look at that mountain, this is basically, I think, the negative discharge. This is the positive discharge. And in the positive discharge, the soil is very rich. And so therefore the trees grow there bigger, stronger, and higher. If you zoom in this area, you can see all those trees. This is basically this area zoomed in, and the surrounding areas don't have a lot of trees. Only this soil is very fertilized by the strike, and that makes the tree grows bigger and stronger. So that's very interesting. That is often the case with those strikes, that the soil is enriched and the trees grow better.
Thanks for noticing it, artist.
Also here you have also a hole, and this is also
what you noticed, isn't it? You said you noticed that around all these sort of root arcing part, all the trees were growing, and you realised they weren't growing up. It was growing sort of, well, they are growing up, but if from the air they look vertical, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, those strikes appear to be those are horizontal in those areas, and this area is the trees grow better near those strikes. And again, here you have in Easter Islands, those strikes. Here you have basically three strikes in a row. Maybe they're more underwater, because sometimes underwater there are also interesting things. But yeah, it's unfortunate that you can't look underwater in Google. But you can see this one was the third one. It's basically swallowed by the sea. You have three mountains that are pushed clearly out of the ground, because this is not a normal mountain range that the plates go against each other and were pushed up a bit. These are pushed out of the ground by an electrical discharge. And here again you have a mountain with trees on it. Here on this side you can see not very big trees, but again the most of the trees are in this area again. Yeah, here you have a whole patch of trees. Here. There's also a hole with trees in it. So trees are attracted to that area. Also minerals and iron-rich things are attracted to this area. You can see a big hole and a big mountain. This mountain again fits almost exactly into this hole. That's often the case. This is a close-up of the hole. You can see that this pushed into the ground. You have a lake and a lot of trees surrounding it. You can see that here a little bit better. And also smaller bushes here, very small bushes. This is mostly the area that is enriched with fertilized ground. And then again, it looks like those experiments, just to show you that this looks a lot like those powdered sands. Those experiments, the same shape occurs. And what is inside those craters is also interesting. Those statues on Easter Island, because this is still Easter Island, look in toward this crater. So this is interesting. You can see those statues looking in toward the crater. Most of the time people only think, well, they're only on the coastline looking at the sea. No, there are also those statues looking in toward this crater. So it must be important. Otherwise you don't build a whole lot of structures that look in toward the crater. Because it's secret ground, probably. And they knew that it was important. Here you can see again those a little bit close by those mountains on Easter Island that were pushed out of the ground. And you can again see most of the trees are in that area again. Here you can see it from the ground. This was only one picture I could find of these three mountains that were pushed out of the ground. And you can clearly see it is pushed out of the ground. Like you have a piece of clay and you put your thumb under it and you push, you get the same type of shape. And this is in Castle Rock in New Zealand. You can see a big strike happened and basically turned the mountains into rubble. A very big strike. You can see those mountains again are pushed out of the ground. Very clear. on an angle. It's a little bit on an angle, sideways. But here you can see it's pushed out of the ground in the distance. Yeah, what pushed out, very, very clear. The weathering is very big on those stones. Maybe those holes were caused by weathering. Maybe it was because of the strike. I don't know for sure. I have to do a little more research about it. You can see the size of those rocks. Those are very, very big. Here's a bicyclist who's bicycling through those mountains. And you can see the strike in all kinds of directions of that mountain. Very, very strong force, because you can see all those rubble lying around, all those stones lying all over the place. They were shot out of the mountains, yeah, all around, and those holes. What is also interesting on this side, you can see those holes again in the stone. Very strong force made those holes. Maybe this is where those balls were extracted and were shot into the ground, or in the air, and then later onto the ground. It's also spherical shapes, or spherical balls, or spherical shapes in the stone. And what is also interesting, I saw this video, and you have here a structure that is very sharp here, with edges that are very sharp. If you zoom in a little bit into that, you can see a very sharp edge. So what is a possibility on this strike zone? Often they build nearby, or actually on the site, they build ancient structures. Or there was already an ancient structure because of the electrical harmony in that area.
Yeah, but they obviously knew, didn't they, then, that there was a lot more, like if the trees were growing there and the rich soil, they knew, didn't they?
Yeah, of course they knew. They were very smart, because they made building electric structures that are so advanced. It's even hard nowadays to build those structures. And you can see, what is interesting, you can see those mountains pushed out of the ground, but where is that hole, that sinkhole basically, that negative charge? Well, it's underground. It's a hole underground. So sometimes the discharge is not vertically, it's horizontal. So you have a horizontal discharge. That's why you can clearly see here also in this picture. I'll go back a little bit. The discharge is horizontal here. And under the ground, under this big mountain, you can see that the discharge is under the ground. It's basically under there. So that's very interesting, that the discharge was under the ground. Sorry. And if you go further, you have the distance, also, for instance, Devil's Tower. And you have the place called Sundance in Wyoming. And you can see this is a crater that was pushed into the ground. I will show it closer by, but basically this is Devil's Tower in Wyoming. Well, it's a little bit another state, but this is in Wyoming, Sundance, Wyoming. So you know where the location is. The distance between those mountain and this crater is almost 38 kilometers. And the discharge is also, you can see that on the surface, yeah, a little bit over here, but probably the discharge is under the ground. You have caves under the ground in this area where the discharge happens. This is Devil's Tower. Well, for me, it's very clear it was pushed out of the ground. You see the size. I always like to show the size with a figure on it, so you can see the scale of this mountain. It is very huge, very straight corners in an hexagonal shape. You can see that from the ground, those shapes.
It's like, it's artist, it's like sequoia tree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, it looks a lot like organic plant life indeed. Yeah. And if you look very close to the surface, a guy was very thankful that he made a picture close up. You can clearly see that there are minerals in Devil's Tower, all kinds of minerals, and they are attracted to the site often. And then you can see all kinds of minerals, or sometimes it's iron rich or metal rich. And you have also in the coastline of Northern Ireland, you can see that it was pushed out of the ground. And if you compare it to the shape of a honeycomb, you can see also they use the same shape. So there's something with this shape that is very natural to occur. That's why I showed this beehive. That you can see that is a very natural shape. Also, insects make. This is devil tower pushed out of the ground, very clear to me. And this is that other strike that is nearby Devil's Tower, near Sundance, Wyoming. And you can see the star shape into the ground. It also looks very like this experiment of a discharge in powders, metal powders and sands. You get the same type of shape. So that's very interesting. And this is another one. This is Dupont du Tape in Colombia. You can see this is also from this is very clear pushed up. You have an observation deck with a thrift store and everything, and you can buy probably pictures of this mountain. And you have
Artist, it's a very interesting question in the chat room right now that Troubles asked.
Okay.
She put, push those mountains out of the ground. Does it change the nature of the rocks raised, or is it just raising certain types of rock?
It raises the rock that is in that area, but it attracts metal from the surrounding area. So with the discharge, the mountain is pushed out of the ground, but it's not only that rock that is underneath that is pushed out, or the surface that is pushed out. It's also it attracts minerals and metals from the surrounding area. It is like a magnet. It attracts all the minerals and metals from the surrounding area, and that they are pushed also into that rock. So often, like I showed before, you have minerals in those rocks, or it is metal rich, iron rich, or it's gold with gold, or other kinds of metal, copper. Hope that answers this question.
Trouble's a girl. She's an Australian lady, but yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, Artist. So it doesn't change the rocks themselves then?
Change them in that kind of way, that they are more metal and metal rich, or they are rich with the gemstones.
Chris has added in the chat, when the rock is created instantly by the electricity as it fuses sand together into rock formations.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great explanation of it, yeah.
Thanks, Chris.
It fuses sands into rock, and also it attracts metal-rich things in the ground. It's attracted into that. And on this mountain, sometimes plant life is very different from the surroundings. This is basically the Trichoma heteropolia plant, but I won't pronounce it again. And you have a different kind of plant that is related to this plant. It looks very much alike, only I think it's more reddish of a color. And it is a little bit different, but it's related to this plant. And that plant only grows on this surface of this mountain. So often there's also specific plants that grow on those mountains and not in the surrounding area. This is basically that strike showed a couple of times. This is in Bolivian Peru. And here you have that strike, and it goes all the way down, basically pushed down aside those mountains. Here you can just strike very clear, pushed like you push with your thumb in the sand. You get that same shape. And this goes all the way here. You can see the surface is boiling. Again, a very big salt lake. Like there's often near that area a very big salt lake. And here, this is the end of the strike, and this is 18 miles from point to point. So you can see the distance. You get a bit of, see how big of a scale this is. And the strike goes all the way up, and in this lake,
artists, and they're not showing any curve, are they?
No, very flat. Yeah, all flat. I think it also on a flat surface, those strikes are far more easier. If you have a rounded surface, that strike wouldn't appear to be the same shape, I think, in the same kind of fashion. So I have to do a little bit more research on it, but I think those strikes only can occur on a very level plane, in my opinion. And even in Africa, you have those strikes, and here, if you look closer on the mountains, you have here the darker mountain. You zoom into this. Sometimes you can't zoom into a mountain because the image is not very sharp, but sometimes you can in this way, and you can see again they are extracting material from the mountain that is iron rich, probably. It's a kind of metal they are extracting, so that's often in the mountain. And this is again the hole, the crater, and it looks like it's a centrifugal force. So the force that was turning around, the spin and everything outside. Again, you have here, if you look very close, those three type of shapes. So it's all electric. See, there's no water over here, but still you can see all those trees type of shapes going outwards. So that also proves very clear those three type of shapes that look a lot like those Lindenberg figures I showed before. Very, very clear. So that's also very interesting. And you have those holes here. You have basically a very big hole. And again, the middle part is pushed up. So again, the same type of fashion. Here you have two smaller ones nearby, and then a bigger one over here. Again, you have the outer rim is pushed up, then it was pushed down, and the inner circle is pushed up again. And here you have that in South America, and near Antarctica, you have a big strike zone all the way going here. It was pushed very clearly, and this was the end. And in this area, you have all kinds of different kinds of surfaces on the Earth that look very strange, like this one, all those balls. Again, exactly like those experiments I showed before from William George Armstrong and Dr. C.J. Ransom. Exactly like those experiments. It's very, very interesting. Here's another one. You can see all those craters and mountains here. This pushed down, this is pushed up, this was pushed up, this was pushed down. It's almost like you looking at the moon. Maybe sometimes they will make a landing on Mars here. Look, it's Mars. And they will fake it, like they often do. Here, in those here you can see this one is pushed down. Again, you have a salt lake here. The surface is pushed down and it's boiling the surface. And here the surface is pushed up. So it's pushed down and up. Here you have another strike zone that looks very similar in that one in South America and in Antarctica, but this is maybe the northern part of South America. This is Mexico. This is the Caribbean Sea area. Whammo! We went straight. You can see this line going up. Okay, and also here on the surface, those mountains are pushed here up, pushed aside. Everything very, very clear to me. And you have those sinkholes in this area. The ground is not that stable anymore. The sinkholes. Yeah, if you have a bigger sinkhole, this is a house. I wouldn't like to live here because it appears to be very dangerous. This sinkhole, and maybe the ground sunken down because of the electric strike. The surface is still not that stable in certain parts of the world. And again, those spherical balls, like I mentioned before, in this near this area, you see where you have this big sinkhole. You have those spherical balls, and here you have spherical balls that are still into the ground. So it's very probably it happened like those balls were shot out of the ground because of the electrical discharge and then fell back down to the earth again. Because most of the time you can only see just the surface of the balls because those were dug up from the ground. So that's very interesting that all near those strike zones, you see all those spherical balls lying around almost every time. Sometimes I can find those spherical balls, but they are probably are around. But yeah, you don't have photographs of them. So I think maybe near to 100% of the time you have those spherical balls. Only sometimes you can't find the pictures of them. And this is just another example. This is in Kazakhstan. You see an electrical discharge, going to the mountain. Basically, it's squashing the mountains flat. And near that area again, you can see those Lindenberg figures above. You zoom in a little bit. Here you have all those three type of shapes. Again, here very big ones, all near that area. And basically, these are pushed out of the ground, but it's also like some electric charge went over it. So it was pushed up and then it was smeared out. And near in the middle part, near this middle part, surrounded are again spherical balls. And if not one, thousands lying around. Very, very, very interesting. And then again, like you mentioned last time, it appears that they were spun around because you have those lines. When you have a potter's wheel and you spin some clay on a potter's wheel very fast, you also get those lines. If you have handmade pottery, you have to look. If you look inside, you can see all the same kind of lines in pottery. And this basically is still fused together because the strike happened so quickly. This ball couldn't be separated from each other. And sometimes they are, so that's also fits that it was happened very fast because sometimes in the process it is frozen. And again, another picture of all those balls lying around. Sometimes they are broken because of the weathering. Most of them are still whole. And if another discharge in Romania and Bulgaria, what? Okay, here we go. So very big discharge. Boemo. And again, you can see those mountains look like three type of shapes here. Also here, this area, almost like you have. If you draw a tree, it almost appears to be the same. So the shapes are there, only they are horizontally. And again, near that mountain range, the most trees, normal trees, they are growing there. Again, near that area, nothing around it, nothing. And in that area of the strike zone, again, the most trees are there. And they are often the highest trees and the biggest trees. And again, near this, in this area, and that's interesting where those three type of shapes are. There are the balls again in this area. You can see there's again spherical balls. Some are still attached to the mountain because they were stopped in the process. Probably if the process of that electrical discharge happened a little bit longer, just a couple of seconds, those round shapes will probably came loose from the surface. But in this fashion, they are still attached to the surface. This one is loose.
Artist, can I ask you something? You know, you said that those trees, you know, when you showed us the petrified forest, and they're like crystals, and you reckon that when the arcing happened, it changed those trees.
Yeah.
Do you think the same happened with these balls and things? They've been petrified due to the arcing, but there was something else that's been petrified, mud or something, because someone's put mud fossils.
Yeah, could be mud fossils or other kind of fossils. Yeah, that were petrified. Yeah, or even giant mushrooms.
Arcing.
Because they appear to have a bit of a mushroom shape. Yeah. So who knows? Maybe they are petrified mushrooms, big mushrooms, or other things that mud or sand that fused and make those shapes. Because often they are round shapes. So there are a lot of possibilities. But it's all petrified, or it was pushed towards the surface, and it was coming out of the surface. Because again, you can see the weathering on the stone surrounding these structures is much more. Sometimes, if the weathering goes on a couple of years, probably they will come loose because this under these round-shaped. Petrified or maybe fused sands. is not that hard as those round shapes on top. So if the weathering goes on a little bit, those become loose and become loose globes or spherical shapes. Yeah, very spherical shapes. They are still attached. They are pushed out of the ground. Maybe they are petrified plant life. Who knows? Here you have another one that is still bubbly. This process is still stopped in a certain type of stage. So you have this stage, and the next stage is that all those balls become bigger and become loose. This is pushed again out of the surface. But the process was stopped in this moment. And you see this ball is still trying to get out. If the process lasted a couple of maybe seconds longer, this ball would pop out, and this was shot out to the sky in all directions. And this is a great example of actually when the process was stopped at a certain time. Here's another spherical ball that went up and came down, and it had a centrifugal force going around. Probably very warm or almost very hot. It became very hot and intense, and it spun around and came down. And this is a meter thick. This dolmen is a dolmen construction, metallic structure. That the ball came down and went straight through the structure, and then spinning away. And then you have this is near Camps Island. You have also all these strikes, so you can see very clear. And again, all kinds of things happening. Lines, yeah, all those lines. I talked next time also show those lines. All the way lines. It's almost like writing paper. All the lines are going this direction. And if you in this area again, near Camp Island in Russia, you have those spherical balls lying around. But sometimes they are very big, almost 2 meters or 3 meters. Sometimes they are smaller. Those are, I think, 1 meter in diameter. And you have also smaller ones. These are basically the shape of marbles. Not that very big marbles. When you were a kid, you played with marbles, and those are the same size. But you can see they are iron wrists, but they are rusting. Surface is rusting. So iron is attracted to those balls and to those mountains. All types of metal and is attracted to that area, and therefore it's always rich of metals and gemstones. And this is an area that's also very interesting. That is in Ferrokanch in Russia. Basically, the surface is going down. What is interesting, this is almost 2 years ago, and you can see the surface is going down. And you have the mountain again, the strike zone, big strike zone. And again, you have a crater, but that crater has a very interesting shape, and it's still expanding. Here you can see it's very small. This is 10 years ago, and this is only 2 years ago. So it's still going on that strike, that electric energy is still there, forming a bigger crater. So sometimes even the process is not stopped, but it's still going on. Sometimes it's almost not noticeable, but it's still going on. But that was very interesting to me. And it has the same shape as those experiments those investigators did, Dr. C.J. Ransom and William George Armstrong. Did those experiments with sand. So you can see this shape looks almost exactly like this shape in Russia. So that fits perfectly those experiments. You can see how big of a drop. These are people. What a big of a drop down.
Artist, this to you reminds you of the Grand Canyon, doesn't it?
Yeah, for sure. It does remind you of the Grand Canyon. And probably because in this area the surface is not that stable, it's still going on. The surface is probably also becoming lower and lower, this surface. So it's still sinking down, sinking down, sinking down. So and it's still expanding. So maybe in 500 or 1,000 years, this area becomes so big that it looks even more like the Grand Canyon, but it already does look like the Grand Canyon.
Hey, artist, something else just to say to you. FPV in the chat room reckons his opinion is the sun or the moon arced there at some point.
Yeah, who knows? Yeah, it's all electrical. It's all electrical things on the Earth that, and also the sun and moon are probably have to do a lot of it because the sun and the moon are also electric and in an electric field of the whole Earth. So of course, they have to do something with it. Yeah. Here you can see how big of a drop it is. Here again, this almost looks a bit like the Grand Canyon. It's not that high, but it's still sinking and expanding. So you can see that the very big strike zone in the distance. And the trees in that area again are the biggest and the highest. Also in this area, this is the electric strike of the Potomsky crater in Russia. You can see again that outer rim, and then it pushed down and pushed up again. So you have a surface that is pushed up a little bit, and then there's a surrounding rim is pushed up a little bit, and the rest is basically the crater. So this has the same shape of those experiments that showed before by Dr. C.J. Ransom. You can see, if you look at this picture, this is the sharpest, and you go one back, exactly the same shape. And again, the trees in this area are the highest, the thickest, and so the trees again like to grow in this area because of the electrical discharge and strike zone. The soil became very fertile. And again, here we have another strike. This one is in the Iron Bengal area in India. Very big strike. So if you go to India, well, you can't miss it. And again, you can see the iron in those mountains. The metal in the mountains, very clear. If you zoom into that, first the shape, first the picture of the shape. Again, the same shape as those experiments by William George Armstrong. Very, 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 very clear, the same.
Artist, very quickly. Angel's here!
Hey, Angel! Angel,
we didn't think you were coming on!
Hi, sorry. Well, I was actually on a phone call, and
okay.
But either way, I wanted to pop in, say hi, how you doing? But you're in the middle of something, so I'm just going to sit back and listen for a minute.
Yeah,
I'm almost last
finished.
week. No, carry on, Otis.
Yeah, we always miss Angel because Angel has a great input, just like Green Smoke has. Again, it looks very much the same as this experiments by William George Armstrong.
Hey, Otis, just while Angel's come in, just explain a little bit about what these pictures are about for you with what you're doing, because he won't know maybe.
Yeah, I finished this part a bit, and then I will go back to the first part to explain a little bit more. But this fits also into the explaining bit. This is basically the electrical discharges with powdered sand and powdered metal. And he did a lot of experiments, and he gets different kinds of shapes of the discharge. And you get this shape, and if you compare that to this strike zone in the Hara Bengal area in India, it looks very much the same. What is also interesting, it's iron rich, because if you zoom into the mountain, you can see they are extracting the iron from the mountain. And also what is interesting, near that area, you have always mountains that became rubble. So it was once solid, but because of the electrical discharge, it became mountains of rubble. But now we go back to the beginning. Again, also want to show this in India. You have those Lindenberg figures. But for Angel, just a recap, I go where you can close your eyes if it's going too fast. This is the handier way to do. Well, let's rewind. Rewind.
I think you'll like all this, Angel.
Okay, this is the point that I want to come back to. This is some experiments that I showed in the beginning from William